The doctor who prescribed war, Bashar al-Assad, a name synonymous with power, repression, and the long, bloody Syrian civil war. Once seen as a reluctant leader and even a potential reformer, he became one of the most enduring and controversial figures in modern Middle Eastern history. This is the story of Bashar al-Assad, his rise to power, his rule, and the dramatic fall of his regime on December 8, 2024. Early life and rise to power. Bashar al-Assad was born on September 11, 1965, in Damascus, Syria. He was the son of Hafez al-Assad, a former Air Force officer who seized power in 1970 and ruled Syria for 3 decades. Unlike his older brother Basil, who was groomed to inherit the presidency, Bashar had little interest in politics. He pursued a career in medicine, studying ophthalmology in Damascus and later training in London. But everything changed in 1994 when Basil died in a car accident. The responsibility of continuing the Assad legacy fell on Bashar. He returned to Syria, joined the military, and began preparing for leadership under his father's guidance. When Hafez al-Assad died in 2000, Bashar was swiftly elevated to the presidency at just 34 years old. He became the youngest leader in the Arab world. Early promises and the shift to repression. Bashar initially promised reforms, ushering in what was briefly known as the Damascus Spring. For a moment, there was hope for political openness and economic modernization. However, this hope was short-lived. Bashar quickly clamped down on dissent, consolidating power within his regime. Over the next decade, he built a security state as authoritarian as his father's, if not more so. The Syrian civil war. The pivotal moment in Bashar al-Assad's rule came in 2011. Inspired by the Arab Spring uprisings across the region, protests erupted in Syria, demanding democratic reforms. The regime responded with brutal force. What began as peaceful demonstrations escalated into a full-scale civil war. For over a decade, the conflict devastated Syria. Hundreds of thousands were killed, and millions were displaced. Entire cities, including Aleppo and Homs, were reduced to rubble. Despite international condemnation, Bashar clung to power with the backing of allies like Russia and Iran. His regime was accused of war crimes, including the use of chemical weapons against civilians. International isolation and resilience. While Bashar faced sanctions and isolation from Western nations, he was propped up by Moscow and Tehran. Russian airstrikes and Iranian militias played a crucial role in tipping the balance of the war in his favor. By 2019, the regime had regained control of most of Syria, but the country remained fractured and impoverished. Bashar presented himself as a symbol of stability, but his legitimacy was questioned at home and abroad. December 8, 2024. The fall of the regime. On December 8, 2024, after years of simmering unrest, Bashar al-Assad's regime finally collapsed. A coalition of opposition forces, backed by international mediators, launched a coordinated offensive that overwhelmed government forces. Key cities, including Damascus, fell within days. The tipping point was widespread defections within the military and growing protests in areas once loyal to the regime. For the first time in decades, the Assad family's grip on Syria was broken. Bashar and his inner circle fled the capital as opposition forces declared victory, while his whereabouts remain unclear. Reports suggest he sought refuge abroad, possibly in Russia. The fall of Bashar al-Assad marked the end of an era in Syrian history. It also raised critical questions about the future of the country and its people. Legacy and aftermath. The legacy of Bashar al-Assad is one of destruction and division. Under his rule, Syria was transformed from a stable dictatorship into a war-torn nation. His policies left a generation scarred by violence, displacement, and poverty. As Syrians begin to rebuild, the scars of his regime will take years, if not decades, to heal. Bashar al-Assad's story is a cautionary tale of power, repression, and resistance. From his unlikely rise to his dramatic fall, his rule shaped the fate of millions. The question now is whether Syria can emerge from the shadow of his legacy and build a brighter future. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories that shape our world.